All right, welcome everyone. This is a public meeting of the West Bend School District and School Board Curriculum Committee. It is 4:30 p.m. on November 12th, 2024. We have two members today that will be joining us virtually, so they will introduce themselves after we do here. I am Melanie Ergot, School Board Member.
June Kruger, School Board Member.
Erin Faust, Program Administrator.
Heather Isaacson, Program Administrator.
Quinn Trueblood, Director of Curriculum and Instruction.
Kelly Lane, School Board Member.
All right, thank you. Our first discussion item tonight is instructional resources selection evaluation rubrics, and that will be presented by Dr. Quinn Trueblood.
Thank you. This is actually for information for the committee, and I think it's just a really good foundational understanding of how instructional resources are selected. And there's a procedure for that. And what you're seeing today is one of the components, and that is how we evaluate resources that teachers are considering or administrators in coordination are considering. And so what you see today is really a rubric that we found to be extremely thorough and well developed by the Department of Public Instruction in Ohio and its workforce. And so rather than create the entire wheel again, they actually have done a phenomenal job, and they actually have quite a few content areas for which are well developed. But what we did was we adapted that. For the most part, the substantive components of that rubric is intact. What is adapted is that the alignment is to the Wisconsin state standards for our state, and also that if there's any criteria that is specific in our policy 361.1, then we would also be guided by that. So what I wanted to do is just walk you through really a very comprehensive rubric, and it won't take very long, but as you walk through it with me, you hopefully will start to see that there is a very thorough process and a rating components, and also a rating of those elements that are found within the resources. And teachers can actually, in coordination with the department, they actually have to narrow down quite a few resources that are available. And once they do that, then it goes through this rubric evaluation. So I would just like to draw your attention to the main components of this rubric, and that is that there are two major sections. It is alignment to the standards. It's also a section on what kind of instructional supports these resources have. And the criteria are very specific. There are 5, and I just want to state that they are, the first criteria would be standards alignment. That has to be a real critical element. It should also be coherent, which is the second one. The third is assessments. How do we measure what students know? The fourth one would be the student supports, which also include technology components, and also teacher supports, which also includes technology components. You'll see, I'm just gonna go to, the, they call them gateways, but one of the ways that we ask our teachers to use the rubric is to score them on a rating of whether they are meeting the expectations, partially meeting them, or does not meet them. And there are score ranges for each of those, and it just really is a point value. But at the end of the day, the rubrics on page, if we just start on page 4 there, I'm just gonna give a minute to track to page 4 on the screen. One of the really impressive things that will be very helpful to our team is that we have clear indicators. We also have clarifying guiding questions, and then there are look-fors, which is basically about evidence. Where do we find these indicators in that resource? And then we record that evidence. So it really allows us to see the preponderance of evidence and where these resources really mark on all of these indicators. And this is literally a 23+ page rubric, but it can go very quickly because many of these rubrics have many of these resources have very similar qualities, but if we really look at them specifically, and there'll be multiple scores. We like to have at least 2 to 3 for sure, and sometimes when it's a larger discipline, we'll have more. But that allows us to do some interreliability rating within the raters. So I think that is a key component, that it isn't just one person doing the rating and our department would be reviewing. We actually would have multiple teachers do it in that subject area, and we'd also then have somebody from the department also do it, and as necessary, an administrator overseeing that department with that content knowledge would also be a rater. So I think those are the key elements of how do we come about a scoring range and comparing these resources. So I will just stop there, and I'll take any questions, or our team can take any questions if you have them at this point.
I don't think anybody has any questions.
I'm hoping that the general thought, and I'd be happy to say it out loud, is that it's wonderful to have a process that's very clear for everybody who's involved, and that we have an operating document that everybody has a role, and it's very methodical, and it's well developed. And what's probably most important for many of our raters is that each of these subject-specific content areas has very subject-specific indicators. So science, social studies, art, all of those would be quite unique. So we have rubric for each one of those, and that will make the work very much more productive for everybody who's rating. So I think that is one of those, it's not a general rubric at all, it's very specific to content. And so I'm very pleased to see the broadness of all of these rubrics that would be used in general.
Thank you. I think it's great to have a system in place, right? And consistency across all the different subjects,
So the next step would generally be in our process is that when these are rated, we only would then really select, we as in the rating team would only select resources that fall within the meets expectations range. And then that would allow us to then issue an invitation to the public to review these resources and capture their feedback on it. And as you recall from the kindergarten through 4th grade ELA adoption process, we would invite the public. We'd also have the materials available, and we would partner up with the West Bend Library to make it available at a very, very public spot, and give a reasonable amount of time, somewhere between 1 to 2 weeks for review, and then capture the feedback and bring it back to the curriculum committee here and report the totality of the recommendation that includes the public's feedback. And then from that point on, after the committee's discussion, the committee then might make a recommendation to move forward with the administration's recommendation for the board's discussion, and consequently some action that would come out of that. So that's just a very brief summary of how it typically works. But what I wanted to note here also is that we do have a process that allows us to be more fluid, in the sense that there will be some reviews going on with rating, and we don't really want a process that slows us down too much. And so anything that goes out will be publicly noticed, but also bring it to the curriculum committee for its first report on the feedback. I can anticipate that I think the most recent new courses were in the physical education department, and so you can anticipate that we'll be doing some resource review and evaluation for selection and recommendation sometime in the next month or so, for particularly a class called sports officiating, which actually starts in the second semester. So there is a little time sensitiveness to it, but we do have a run-rate for that, and also possibly a coaching class in that department. But I can foresee also there is also a 10-year mark that comes up in a lot of the AP or advanced placement courses. where I'm gonna be doing a review on the timeline for that, and that would also undergo this same evaluation process using this rubric to bring forth some recommendations to the committee.
All right, sounds good. Thank you for your presentation.
Yes, thank you.
All right. The next item for discussion is recommendation to rename courses currently named English as Second Language. And I believe, Quinn, you will also be presenting this as well.
Yes, thank you. I'm just gonna pull it up so I can see it. So whenever there are any changes to a course, it does have to come through the curriculum committee for discussion. And so what we're proposing today is a name change. There are no substantive curriculum changes at all. And the reason for this request is multiple-fold. The one is that we really want to align names for courses to what is recommended nationally and state through the national and state departments. And we also are very, very much proponents of using an asset-based language approach for students. And the present course titles right now would be what I consider to be outdated and not asset-based language. And what we're really proud of is that we want to serve our students with not only the right courses, but also the names that really reflect them as multilingual students with appropriate programming so that they can advance in their competencies with their language acquisition. So what I'm proposing here, and as you can see before you, is that what is currently named English Language Learner ESL 1 would be then renamed to English Language Development 1. That would be the first course to be request for a change. The second would be English Language as a Second 2, change to English Language Development 2. You can see the consistency there in those two levels. And the third course that I would request for renaming would be, it's presently called English as a Second Language 3 to Multi-Language Lab 1, and also English as a Second Language 4 to Multi-Language Lab, Multilingual Lab 2. And I will pause at this point if there are any questions to receive.
Just reiterate what I think I heard you say. It's just a verbiage change, and it will better align if a student and maybe the reason, I may be jumping to conclusions, but would it be for the student who is in this course, if they were to move to a different state, would that help the new state know, I mean, that where they are in their development process? Because you said it was a state and national, just being consistent there.
Yes, it would be, but more technically speaking, there's always an assessment, an access assessment that is each individual student would be taking in any system that they enter, whether it's in the state of Wisconsin or the state of California, and that would then determine their level of English language competency that would allow them to be placed in a certain class within the system. So that's what we would do here in West Bend also.
Yeah, I don't see any problems with that. It's just a name change, right? So that would be the
It is
only
a name
change. Yeah.
And I think they will be really benefiting students who are in the program, who touch it, and the teachers who work with the students every day and make progress. And of course, one of the technical pieces that I wanted to state also is that there is a course coding system that we are very aware of, that we want to be sure that we are reporting properly, and I can assure you that we will be attending to that.
All right, that sounds good. Do we have any other comments or further questions? Nope. All right.
It sounds like we might just be needing to report it a little differently. So maybe that's where the change helps everyone involved. The way you mentioned we're reporting, the way we're reporting these students or classes. This will help
Yes,
clear
that's an
that up.
accurate statement. That's an accurate statement, Jim.
Okay. So it sounds like semantics. Okay.
All right, is there any other questions or follow-up? No. All right, in that case, we have reached the end of our agenda, and I would make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, June. All right, then we